Hey guys, Josh with Adept Ape Channel. Today what we're going to be doing is kind of a fun video, and what that is I've taken some of the more funny, some of them are more dumb, some are just ridiculous questions and comments that I get. And if you don't know, I have an email address. You can email me questions about your, usually cat engines. That's what I prefer you email me about, at adeptape@yahoo.com. And also, of course, we have comment sections on all the videos, and I get some really weird questions sometimes. Let's discuss and go through some of these questions, and the first one I'm going to start with is an email, and I've actually showed this to one or two people before because I just found the exchange to be so funny, and it's kind of illustrative of what I have to answer sometimes, or try to. Good day, sir. Thank you very much for advice. Now, I changed thermostat, truck running at 190, but today, 18 December morning, I pull my loaded truck at 150. Then I leave from gas stations, enter at highway, then he goes 160. Then one misfire, I see black smoke in stack. Only loaded like this. Not too much cold, thank you. Well, I try to answer him, even if it's, this is an owner-operator, obviously. They're trying to get their truck to run right, so I'll do my best generally. So I asked him back. So it was running at 190 after you changed the thermostats, but now it's running cold. What was the outside temperature? And I got the answer back. -7 degrees. Now, if you remember, he had just said not too much cold. Folks, -7 is pretty cold. That is, I don't even want to be outside. Now, you might be saying, well, he's talking about centigrade. I don't think he is. I think he's talking about Fahrenheit, because all the temperatures he references here, 190, 150, 160, that is all in Fahrenheit. And if he is using all Fahrenheit and then he says -7, I'm going to assume he's talking about Fahrenheit, folks, and -7 is ridiculously cold. Of course, your engine's not going to run at full operating temp generally in those conditions. Now, maybe he is talking about the metric, and that would be about 20 degrees Fahrenheit, but that's still very cold for an engine to be running in those 20 degrees conditions. Some engines aren't going to ever get up to full operating temperature. So I answered him back, and I said, well, at that cold of a temperature, your engine isn't going to be at operating temperature as the air is so cold. I don't even know what to say with this reply, folks. Is it common? What? What does that mean? Is it common? Are you talking about the temperature outside? I would say -7 is not very common unless you're in Antarctica, but I don't even know what to reply here, folks. I think I did reply, though. I said I think he did have something actually going on with his IVA system, because it seems to be kicking in around 150, 140 when the IVAs start working. So hopefully I was able to help him there, but I just thought that email exchange was pretty funny. So let's get to a different question here. Good morning, team. I have a box truck with a C4 engine. Since a certain time, my truck has not been running more than 55 miles per hour. Nothing is showing on the dashboard. What can be a problem? You don't even know what engine you actually have in your vehicle, unless that was he typoed that. There's no Cat C4 engine. There is a C4.4, but they didn't put those in, at least in the US or any other country that I'm aware of, a box truck. Now, the C4.4 is not even necessarily a Cat engine either. It's a Perkins engine. And I don't believe he's talking about in a different country, though, because he's mentioning mile per hour. So I'm assuming he's in North America. There is no C4 Cat. So if you give me this information, I have nothing to go on. Not only that, almost nothing here. It just says he won't go over 55, and there's nothing on the dashboard. I don't know if he's taken it to a shop yet. Is the boost low? Is it smoking? Is it missing? Anything else? You give me no information. It's very hard to diagnose something. So I'll usually come back with more questions. So what I replied was, I've never heard of a C4 Cat engine in a truck application. What kind of truck is this? Thinking maybe he's overseas or something, like I said, and it's not an engine I'm familiar with. Just says box truck 2005 with Cat engine. So very frustrating as someone who's trying to help you. And I don't charge for these emails, folks. I answer them for free. Obviously, you could donate if you wish, and some people do. That's why I do the emails. adeptape@yahoo.com on PayPal, or at adeptape on Venmo. But so I was like, okay, well, let me try to help him. Let me start moving it down the process. So tell me the engine serial number, so at least I know what engine. I'm assuming it's going to be a 3126 probably, but I don't know. So I know what engine you have. Have you had the ECM plugged in to check if there are log codes? Have you measured the fuel pressure? Good things to start with. Crickets. No reply. So the next one we're going to be getting to is kind of a comments related one, and that most of these comments we're going to be focusing on, at least the first part here, come from the video where I'm reacting to the, I believe it was a Nissan engine getting built in Pakistan, and the owner of that channel actually wanted me to do that video, and some people thought, oh, you're being very critical of them, or why are you talking about this? But here's some of the comments I got, and it just kind of irritates me. So, built-in torque wrench called experience. Folks, I've got lots of experience too. It doesn't hurt to have a torque wrench though. It gives you accurate torque. That's all it does. I know truckers that can use their tire thumpers to tell within 3 psi what the tire pressure is in a low tire. Not surprised these guys can torque bolts by hand. They're not torquing them. They're tightening them. Now, anyone can tighten bolts. It's not torquing them though. That doesn't mean that they're not tight. I didn't say they're not tightening them. I just said they're not torquing them. There is a distinct difference. They probably have built enough of them engines to know what the torque feels like by hand. A lot of comments saying this about the experience of these guys. They've never used a torque wrench. If you've never used a torque wrench, how do you know what 75 foot-pounds feels like, or 150 foot-pounds? And that's not a critique of them. It's a critique of these comments saying, oh, well, they're so experienced building these engines. They know what the torque is. They can't possibly know what 75 foot-pounds feels like if they've never used a torque wrench, for crying out loud. 2 steps in logic, folks. Don't just say, oh, well, they got lots of experience, so they know. Now, that's not to say you can't put an engine together without a torque wrench, and it might run fine, might run a long time. What I'm saying is they're not using a torque wrench. And I did get some comments saying, hey, you know, even if they did have a torque wrench, they probably don't have access to the torque specifications, and that's probably true also. And that's a somewhat just criticism there of the video, but these torque wrench ones drive me nuts. Now, getting a little bit different on the same track with the torque wrench comments on the same video was, how far did we get before the first torque wrench was invented? How much do we actually know that did not come from a book or from someone else? Also, was the torque wrench built before or after the first engines? We can learn a lot from these guys. We tend to be fussy about having loads of tools we never need. So I actually looked up when the first torque wrench was invented, and that looks like around 1918. Now, of course, there were engines before that. Now, folks, engines have developed quite a bit, believe it or not, since the late 1800s and early 1900s. And if you think they've gotten less or more complicated, they've gotten a lot more complicated. And now the bolt technology, the casting technology, everything's improved, or at least has hopefully improved. Now, why wouldn't you want to use a tool that gives you a specific reading? You know, would you want a mechanic put your engine together without a torque wrench? Do you want someone that's doing electrical troubleshooting to use a light bulb with 2 wires instead of a multimeter? The tools matter. There's a reason why mechanics buy lots of tools. Some, I think, want to waste money, but I sure as heck don't, and I have a lot of tools. Tools give you better results when you're using the proper tool. So, how about a little destruction week before we do any more comments? Two destruction of the week this week, and the first one comes from Jerry, a different Jerry than normally sends them, but this one had a big old turbocharger failure. Look at that, the wheels actually snapped in half. The next one we have is from Liam, and this is a 6NZ, and as you can see, a little valve train problem here. Looks like it dropped a valve or busted the head off, went into the cylinder, causing some pretty major damage. Also caused the liner to crack. Look at that. You don't see that too often. Let's get back to the topic at hand. One I saw is more just bad advice, but crank no start, but we'll start and run with ether. 100%, it's always the injectors. No, it's not always the injectors. If you crank it and it won't start and you give it a little ether and it fires right up, don't go buy a set of injectors. Now, that's not to say it could be the injectors. Maybe 50% of the time it's a set of injectors, but it could be a whole bunch of other stuff other than injectors. It could be a weak fuel pump, weak Huey pump problem if it's a Huey engine, common rail problem, fuel system, who knows? There's probably 500 different things it could be, and not necessarily the injectors, so don't always take the information in the comment section as, at least I hope you're not, as what you should do for your engine. The next one we've got, If you have leaks after a rebuild, it was a bad rebuild. I don't care about any excuses. When I seal a leak, I know why it leaked. I know how to seal it, and I know it will not leak because I know what I'm doing. Now, the same commenter also said, I'm not a truck driver, but I put Teflon tape on my drain plug, and it never leaks. And I don't have to crank on it to get that stupid copper washer sealed, which is, of course, old and worn out, because whoever remembers to get a new one of those right? The very certain person that doesn't necessarily know what they're doing is kind of the most dangerous person for mechanics out there because they're generally the ones that do the worst jobs. It's good to know what you don't know. Now, first off, leaks after a rebuild. Yeah, hopefully you don't have leaks after a rebuild, but let's say an engine in frame, for example, you're generally not resealing the entire engine. You might pull the cylinder head off, the oil pan off, maybe the water pump, maybe something else, but a lot of times you're not doing the air compressor or the front and rear structures, the rear main seal, the front main seal. A whole bunch of seals on there may have been leaking already. So is it your fault if the air compressor had a leak and the customer decided not to do it? Does that make you a bad mechanic? No, it doesn't. Sometimes there's problems with certain designs. Cap on the 3400 series engines, for example, for a long time have had leaks by the head gasket area. And they've tried a whole bunch of different stuff. It seems like what they're doing now with the oil drain funnels between the head and the block seems to be working, and some of it worked, some of it didn't. So that's not to say you know what you're doing. You can follow every specification, perfectly install it, and it's a bad design. Teflon tape on a drain plug. Now, Teflon tape. Teflon tape's amazing for sealing pipe threaded fittings. It's for pipe thread. Now you can use Teflon tape or pipe dope, some people call it. It comes in either a liquidy paste or the tape, which probably more people are familiar with. Now he's putting it on his drain plug, but it says it has a copper seal washer. If it has a copper seal washer, it's not a pipe threaded fitting. Most drain plugs anymore, at least the ones I'm familiar with on diesel engines, aren't pipe thread. Almost all of them use a seal washer, an O-ring, or something else. Maybe it's a quick drain. Most of them aren't pipe thread. Pipe thread are meant, because they're tapered, to kind of tighten at more and more as you install them because they're tapered against each other, and you need a sealant for them, hence the need of Teflon tape. If you just put Teflon tape or liquid Teflon on a O-ring or a compression style fitting like JIC, it's not doing anything. The sealing face is where the seal is, the O-ring or the face of a JIC. Where the faces meet, they need to be under tension. If they're damaged and they're not seating properly, putting tape around the threads isn't going to help you do anything. You need to understand what you're talking about when you're talking about it, please. Now, the last two are just pretty much funny. One is funny on purpose, and I don't know why this one caught me so much, but it just says 5 out of 4 people are bad at math. LOL. So that's in reference to the nice truck driver video where the guy drove from Florida up to Idaho to have me work on it, and the guy didn't even get the main caps in the right order, the previous mechanic. So that was pretty funny. But the last one, I don't even know what the heck he is referring to here. It just seems like nonsense. Literally just says, hairy stylist that you wear safety shirt. Wow. Wow. What is he talking about? I don't even know. The video has nothing to do with what? I don't know. I don't know who's leaving this comment. Obviously, maybe it's a troll, but just madness, folks. I have to deal with these every day. I probably do 200 emails a week, and I can't even tell you how many comments I have to read every week, but this is kind of the best of what I've had lately. Hope you guys enjoyed this style of video. Thanks for watching.